Our guest this afternoon, Brother Gerard Rummery, has distinguished himself as a leading scholar and lecturer on topics dealing with the Institute, catechesis, the Church, as well as the global Lasallian family. Born and raised in Australia, I think you'll note from the accent, his association with the Lasallian community began with his own grade school and secondary school education at a Lasallian school in Sydney. He completed the novitiate and scholasticate in 1950, and shortly thereafter, he began teaching at De La Salle School in Melbourne. He also pursued his own studies, earning degrees from Melbourne University and a master's in education from Sydney University. Further studies led him to postgraduate work at London University, as well as earning a PhD from Lancaster University, following research and studies in France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. Brother Gerard was a professor at the Catholic College of Education in Sydney before he was called to Rome as a staff member and director of SIL, the Lasallian International Center. In 1986, he was elected to the General Council and re-elected 7 years later, completing 2 terms of office as a General Councillor. Brother Gerard was a foundation teacher of the Buttermer Institute for 20 years, as well as a teacher and lecturer for several cohorts of the Lasallian Leadership Institute, where many of us were blessed to have met his acquaintance. He currently serves as an adjunct professor at the Australian Catholic University, as well as a researcher with Lasallian Educational Services in Melbourne, Australia. He continues to lecture and publish on all things Lasallian. His recent publication is a book titled Brothers to One Another, and quoting from the Institute's website, it states, "It is an inspiring story of courage and strength about brothers in Romania, Czech, and Slovakia, as well as Hungary between 1948 and 1990. Brother Gerard is a gentle soul whose knowledge and wisdom will continue to inspire and grace the Institute and thousands of Lasallians locally and internationally for many years to come. My fellow Lasallians and associates, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce this gentle soul, our brother, Gerard Rummery, FSC.
I felt like saying it's lovely to see so many old faces, but I didn't mean that. I meant to say, see all these faces of people with whom I had the privilege of being a teacher over quite some years. I think this evening, what I plan to do is this. You're looking at something that says John Baptist de La Salle, a heritage. I always prefer heritage rather than tradition. Tradition can become a straitjacket. Oh, Carruthers, we've never done it that way before. No, heritage is something you are heirs to. And what I thought we should do is, first of all, recall what are we heirs to. We're going to look at a very short presentation which is going to tell the story of John Baptist de La Salle. Very simply, about 8 minutes only, so no time to go to sleep. And we'll take the story from today, from 331 years ago, to the present day. Interesting, isn't it, that here's something, today, you see, if you look at the 82 or 3 countries where we're still represented throughout the world, here you have something which has gone through. I mean, if you think about it from a French viewpoint, God spoke French. But the French brothers who went into Asia in 1852, supplemented then by the brothers coming here from the States who were Irish and German and Polish and all sorts of things, they actually spoke in English, learnt English. This movement has transcended languages, cultures, religions, and as I look around this room, gender. When I began teaching in 1951, we had 21 brothers in the community, and we had 1 woman of the other sex, who taught grade 3 naturally. She was well down, something like that. So what is there about this that's actually made it carry across all these different things? Why are we teaching, for example, probably among the religious congregations. We're teaching probably more Muslims than anybody else in the world. What is there about this that sort of... That's really, I think, one of the reasons, I suppose that rightly comes out of my own experience of having had the privilege of actually visiting the brothers and their works in every continent, and realizing many different times in my life that doesn't matter where you get out of the plane in some remote part of Africa, the school you're going to see or the work you're going to see is the same. There's something about it. You know, the moment you get there and are there a few hours, it's the same. Some culture has carried right across these different cultures, languages, religions, gender. And that, I think, says there's some very, very strong foundation stone to it. I think the foundation stone, part of the foundation stone, was that decision of John Baptist de La Salle in 1686 to say to this group of nondescript teachers, what do you want to call yourselves? Because the word they were calling themselves by was the French word maître, masters. And they said, we want to call ourselves brothers. And then they said, we want to be brothers to one another and older brothers to the young people. And the French says, à nous confier par Dieu, confided to us by God. Older brothers, brothers to one another, older brothers to the young people. It's a vision of education which is about relationship. It's about relationship. It's about relationship. Excuse the broken record. But that's what's so interesting about it. There's some anthropological foundation stone there that transcends languages, cultures, religions. And that ties up into a whole lot of other things. It ties up, for example, into the great discussion for a day and a half when we were writing the 1986 rule, now we're trying to supersede, on the discussion of, well, what's the Institute, what's the mission of the Institute? And people said it is this, this and that, but the people in the rule had said it is the human and Christian education of young people. And all the Latins, well, most of the Latins, general term here, for all Spaniards, Italians, Portuguese, etc., jumped up and they said, you don't need the word human. Christian education is the full education, obviously. St. Thomas Aquinas says so, therefore it must be true. And everybody went through this debate. I know this vividly because I happened to be in the chair. That's why I know how much this went backwards and forwards. And David, you might remember this too. So we go through this for a whole day, and then we go through... Next morning, some of the people from Asia spoke. And they said, our education is a human education given by Christians. It's given in a spirit of Christianity. It's given as our gospel presence among people whom we love and serve, etc. Whom we don't baptize, whom we don't convert. We're there as a Christian presence to give them something that they didn't have. When the brothers went to Malaysia in 1852, there was one school. It was the famous school in Singapore, which still exists, you see. It was Raffles, named after, of course, the founder of Singapore. And you go to the Raffles Hotel and have a gin sling, if you like, even today. But there was no other school. So the brothers opened a school and said, anybody can come to this school. And if your religion is different, doesn't matter, your religion won't be interfered with, we'll respect everything, etc. So that as I sat on the Penang golf course in 1900 and, goodness me, about 1990 it must have been, I think, back in the last millennium, yes it was, here we are celebrating 140 years of the brothers in Malaysia. And the Chief Justice stands up and he says, I think I was the first Buddhist pupil in this particular school of the brothers. And he said, if I'm a better Buddhist, he said, it's because I went to this school. He remains a Buddhist, etc. So I think the people from Asia reminded us in a very important way. It was first of all about the human, yes, and Christian, because that's what we are, that's the spirit which we teach, but it's about the two things. You can say they're one, but in a country where you're a visitor and where you're not part of the major religious, etc., that's what you're offering. And this human and Christian, I think, is a very, very important thing for us to keep in mind, because it reminds us that in De La Salle's school, the young people spent 6.5 hours each day. And one half of the hour of the day, at the end of the day, those who have ever taught religion, imagine teaching religion at the last period of the day. However, that's when they did it. But the other 6 hours were spent reading, writing, arithmetic, politeness, everything else you can imagine. Elementary navigation for the children who lived in Calais and Boulogne, because they were fisher folk and needed to know how to get back to port. Before the French Revolution, down in Marseille, they added teaching Italian and teaching Spanish, because these people were not learning Latin and Greek, they were learning how to work in offices that needed people who could do double entry bookkeeping and read and write. It's an education about needs. What do they need? What can we offer them because of their need? So that's one aspect of it. That's why, deliberately why, in simply scripting this, I said we go back to the beginning, but we take it through to the present day. Because, as one of the French historians asks himself the question, why did De La Salle succeed when his contemporaries, predecessors, didn't? And he answers his own question by saying he launched a movement. And the French word mouvement is a stronger political word, perhaps, than the English word. It's like that idea of a stone thrown into the lake where the ripples go and they go and they go and they go. And that's what we're witnessing in the existence of the Lassallean movement in so many countries today. As you read the circular, you will have noticed Brother Alvaro saying that we attained our greatest number of brothers ever in 1966. What was it, 16,743.5 or some statistic anyhow like that. But then he points out that ever since that time we have declined in numbers and declined and declined and declined, etc. And the number of Lassallean works today is greater than it was in 1966. There's something about this movement which is infectious, which has gone on, touched other people, like so many of you here today, and that's why it goes on. The origins of that, I think, are what we're going to look at next, because we're talking about something called association. And I'll just take this PowerPoint through, etc. I'm going to talk about association at three distinct times. I'm sorry we can't all see. Can we all see that? Or if not, I'll sort of shout it out louder and I'll tell you what I'm dealing with. I'm going to talk about it at 3 different moments. About 1641, long before I was born even, 1691 and 1694. Then we're going to talk about it today. Then we'll talk about some implications for it. Okay, so let's begin. We're back in Gerard, a famous name for the brothers, where because the place was so poor they nearly all starved or froze to death. Still, Gerard still exists in Paris, just now the meat works, by the way, but anyhow, that's a... And in 1641, Jean-Jacques Ollier, the founder of the Society of Saint-Sulpice, and 2 companions began community life. This is now from his life. Their idea was to work towards the establishment of a seminary in spite of the collapse of a previous attempt. The Council of Trent had said we must have seminaries to train priests, because prior to this time priests were not trained. You studied your theology, you were ordained, and off you went. These people are trying to say, well, listen, we need to train them because they need to be something more than just head people who know theology. And the biography goes on to say, to judge according to the rules of human prudence, this foundation seemed completely unreasonable. It was quite rash to go and attempt such a difficult work in a dilapidated village without any temporal support. So, what do?